Welcome back to the Lightkeepers Podcast, an exclusive production of A Guiding Light, our nonprofit charity dedicated to the idea that knowledge is power and good information leads to a better life. I'm Clayton Vandiver, your Lightkeeper, with my co-host, as always, Charlene, our very own licensed clinical social worker certified in the state of Florida. This show is dedicated to everyone who wants to get the most quality out of life that they can. Join us for our conversation this week about the odd couple, the spouse or loved one that just doesn't quite agree, on this edition of the Lightkeepers Podcast. Please leave your questions or comments below and join our conversation. Questions are answered during the next show online every Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. The Lightkeepers Podcast is an exclusive production of A Guiding Light Incorporated. And agree with what?
Agree with wishes for medical treatment.
Wishes! I should have known that.
So a lot of times on this program we talk about advanced care planning, advanced directives, and this goes back to that because of an experience I had recently talking with a couple, and it was started out as a very good conversation and became very intense very fast when we got to talking about whether or not one of them would want to be resuscitated if their heart stopped. Talking about a do not resuscitate form.
I see.
And one spouse said, of course they do. And the other one said, no, actually, I don't.
And that was probably a little bit of a surprise to both you and the other spouse.
Yes, it was.
Usually they're in agreement.
Correct.
They've already talked about things like that.
Most of the time when I talk with couples or even families, it's been an ongoing conversation, or it's at least something that they've talked about. You know, this isn't how I want to be. This isn't how I want to live. I don't want to do that treatment. So they have a general idea.
Yeah.
This time there was a difference in opinion, and for whatever reason, maybe because one person was not comfortable bringing that topic up without maybe someone there to mediate.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the circumstances were exactly, but either way.
Did it sort of feel like they might have changed their mind recently, or maybe even on the spur of the moment?
I think it was a recent development.
Okay.
This is someone who had a lot of issues, medical issues going on.
Okay, like they reconsidered in the scope of those.
And they had recently been hospitalized, and they could see that things were progressing.
Well, could there also have been a little element of denial on the part of the spouse? Like they kind of knew what was going on, but weren't ready to give up yet?
There was no denial.
Oh.
There was an overabundance of not wanting to let go.
Well, we can understand that too.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's ultimately what it boiled down to. Sometimes as a counselor, as a therapist, I have to kind of blow the whistle and put the referee shirt on and send everyone back to their corners for a moment. And this was one of those situations where I had to bring the meeting to a pause and say, we need to talk about this.
Right.
And there was some heated discussion between the two of them. And it went nowhere in a hurry. And I said, you know, what I'm hearing here from one person is they're tired. They're done. They no longer have the quality of life that they want.
Well, that's I have to bring up an important thing I just observed there, because, you know, in conversation between the two, they might have never noticed, they might have never picked up on it, but a professional counselor, a professional social worker, someone with lots and lots of master's degrees and quite a bit of student loan, is someone who is going to recognize that and pick up on it intuitively. And that's the wonderful thing about having a little bit of professional counseling on occasion. Someone there who can advocate for you, can sort of see the things that maybe you don't want to see or you're not able to see, and they pick up on them. Now, not every social worker can do this. Not every counselor can do this. They're trained to, but some just have amazingly intuitive, innate talent. And that's why we started this show, because this is one of them.
An important part of being a counselor, at least for me, an important part of doing the counseling is not just acknowledging what was said, but also recognizing and acknowledging what wasn't.
Yeah.
And that's an important aspect. And that came into play with this particular couple. And I just had to pull it out in the open and make it speakable, which is basically where you take the elephant in the room and you pull it out and you put a spotlight on it and you say, "This, here it is, let's talk about it."
Well, a moment ago we were talking about times when you may have to ask people to step back into their corners and give it a moment, give it a pause and think about it. There are also times when I guess you have to draw them out and say, "Look, this is the important thing that we're all sort of dancing around now. Let's talk about it. Let's get into that."
Exactly.
And that's important,
and
talking about it and carrying on a conversation and being open enough at any stage in life, in any physical condition, is a good time to open up even uncomfortable conversations, because without those, you really don't know what that other person's wishes might really be.
And you know, and the thing here is emotions can be frightening.
Yes.
Emotions are scary, especially when they're coming from someone that we love and that we care about, because we don't want to upset them. And so we're going to tiptoe around that topic. We're going to dance around that topic. But the thing is by doing so, we're not doing anybody any favors. And when talking about advance directives, it's particularly difficult because you know that your choice, what you want, is going to hurt them.
Do you think that the inability to bring these things up, possibly the fear of hurting the other person or just being uncomfortable, do you think that it's just for some people a human condition, or is it a male-female more dominant condition?
No, it's a human condition.
Okay. I was wondering if it might be that stoic male pride that men just don't want to bring up things and talk about them and be emotional.
No, it's a human condition. It's a human condition. And another aspect of the human condition is not wanting to talk about our own demise and
of course.
our own end of life, because there is a horrible taboo out there that if we talk about it, we're going to make it happen, we're going to bring it to pass, speak it into being, and you know, and newsflash, we're all going to die at some point. Better to be prepared
and
than
something
not.
You've told a lot of people over the years is that, you know, you can look all over your body, you're never going to find an expiration date.
That's true.
I haven't found one yet.
That's very true. And that comes from a story of one of my hospice patients was very sick, and they asked me how long they had left because they were convinced they were going to die that day. And I checked the feet, checked the toes, checked the palms, and I said, "Nope, can't find it." And they said, "Find what?" I said, "The expiration date." And it's making light of a very serious thing, but the truth is, as much as we may fear it, as much as we may anticipate it, the end is going to come for all of us, but we don't know when.
And, you know, people say, "Wow, you're always dealing with topics," or "Your show is all about, you know, nearing end of life, preparing for end of life. It's all for older people." Newsflash, folks. I'll never forget my first experience with the potential for how short life can happen. Well, it wasn't my first, but the first I experienced as an adult. I was working, one of my first jobs, about 19, 20, a 21-year-old colleague of mine dropped to the floor with a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't expect it either. It can happen any time.
Anytime.
In any, my own father, 48 years old, which seems quite young to me now from my perspective. He had deep vein thrombosis, 1963. They just called it a heart attack, and he dropped to the floor. They said he was gone before he reached the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And he certainly didn't expect that. He didn't see it coming. He didn't plan for it. And he had no plans at that time.
Now, let me ask you something.
And that's the important thing. He didn't expect that was going to happen.
I hate to interrupt that, but let me ask you.
Yeah.
Had your dad survived that heart attack, but not been well,
The quality of life, yeah.
would your mom have known what he wanted for his medical treatment?
Well, you see, at that age, they never would have discussed
Exactly.
that. They never would have thought of that. Most people don't.
And
this is a conversation for all people at any stage in life, in any physical condition. We've been married 30 years this year, and that's a real blessing. I thank the Lord for every minute of my life. But we have only had that conversation a handful of times.
usually after something catastrophic.
Years, or in preparation for something catastrophic. We've had our share of operations and life events. A couple of years ago, a large SUV decided to T-bone our tiny little Prius and turned my wife into a pinball inside it. Believe me, we had some conversations immediately after that, and thank the Lord we were able to have those conversations.
Correct.
But it can happen at any time.
And the thing is, sometimes the conversation that you have today is different than the conversation you have tomorrow, and that's where this couple was.
And even so, a long time later, as that couple was, you can reconsider.
Absolutely.
And you might not have a chance to have that conversation then and say, wait, I've changed my mind. I didn't want that, I want this.
And see, and the thing is these care decisions have profound impacts. For example, this particular couple, the one opted for the do not resuscitate. And we had a very long talk, and I had to, call a timeout, let everybody sit in silence, collect their thoughts, and then come back into the ring. But it was acknowledging what neither one of them wanted to say. And that was that one wasn't ready to give up. One wasn't ready to let them go. The other was no longer happy with life. They were very happy with their family. They still love their family. They would want to be here forever if they could. But they knew their health was failing, and they didn't want to put themselves through that, and they didn't want to put the family through watching it be a long, drawn-out process.
Well, that is something to think about. Again, at any stage in life, at any age, in any physical condition, anything can happen. I used to talk to people when I was with the Department of Elder Affairs for a few years, in a very out in left field break in my career. And I used to tell people about long-term care insurance. And they said, well, what's the most important thing you can tell us about long-term care insurance? I said, well, generally, when you're old enough to be thinking about it, it's too expensive for you to afford. And when you're able to afford it, you're too young to ever give it any thought. And yet, anyone at any time can need long-term care insurance.
Absolutely.
Because if you're that 21-year-old fellow who survived the heart attack, by the way, he might have had a lifetime infirmity from that then his family would not have been prepared to assist him with. And they might have needed special treatment, special in-home care, special furnishings, all kinds of things that long-term care insurance might have helped him with. And I'm not selling long-term care insurance. I'm just saying it's something that you don't think about when you're young because you think you'll live forever. And by the time you think, hey, that would be a pretty good idea, that might help out me and help out my family, oh, it's unaffordable by now.
Yeah.
Because as you get older, the price for that goes up. So if you're a younger viewer or listener to the show, you might want to talk to someone about that sort of a benefit. If you're newly married and you think, I could get into a car wreck tomorrow, God forbid, And I might need that sort of help. Think about long-term care insurance. It's a conversation you and your advisors, counselors might need to have.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you can always add your comments or questions below, or topics you'd like to hear us talk about. Of course, this is all a highly personal choice. No conversation we have on the Lightkeepers podcast should ever take the place of your own medical care team or other professional advisor, who should always be consulted on your specific situational needs. We all need good information to help make the most informed decisions so we can live life on our own terms. This conversation is to start you thinking, because most people are not prepared at all, are they?
No.
And some are very well prepared indeed, just from joining us here each week on the Lightkeepers Podcast every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. The Lightkeepers Podcast is an exclusive production of Vanimation Studios and A Guiding Light, and is found on all audio RSS podcast feeds and also on YouTube. Visit the website at aguidinglight.org. Or to make a tax-deductible contribution, just send your check to the address that's right below me here on the screen. We're so grateful for your support. Speaking of that, hit the like and subscribe buttons. It's free, so you'll catch every single episode. I'm Clayton Vandiver, your Lightkeeper. We'll see you next time.